New at 6, an elderly man's death and a new criminal investigation are raising questions about a state program that people seldom see but may need one day.
WESH-TV News investigative reporter Greg Fox explains state law gives far-reaching power to professional guardians who make life and death decisions.
Exactly why were you signing DNRs for so many of your wards? Were you not checking on their medical conditions? Did this have some benefit financially for you?
Rebecca Fearley is facing a criminal investigation, and the governor has ordered a complete review of the Department of Elder Affairs Office of Public and Professional Guardians. That follows revelations that Fearley signed Do Not Resuscitate, or DNR, orders for most of her wards, the people she's supposed to protect.
Coming around, coming around.
One of them is Jack Marr. He lives on his own, but Fearley was appointed his guardian by a judge to make medical and financial decisions. He says the first thing she did was cancel his aqua therapy, which he claims was helping him to walk. Then he was shocked to find out she'd signed a DNR.
If something happens to me, somebody needs to resuscitate me. Somebody needs to try to save my life.
That's what Stephen Stryker told Fearley when he learned she signed a DNR for him. His daughter complained to Orange County Judge Janet Thorpe, writing, "There was a DNR on his medical records despite his vocal opposition." A psychiatrist who examined Stryker said he wanted to live, so he concluded Fearley's reasons for the DNR were not rational. Just 4 days after Stryker's daughter complained, he stopped breathing. No effort was made to save him, and he died.
I would like to see justice for my father. I feel like my father would be alive still if it wasn't for her actions.
Judge Thorpe, who removed Fearley from nearly 100 Orange County cases in early July, said she abused her powers. Court records reviewed by WESH-TV Investigates show Fearley has handled more than 800 guardian cases in 9 local counties over 2 decades. Local judges have now revoked more than 140 of her DNRs.
They have the right to sign a DNR without the court's permission.
Legal expert Kyle Fletcher says while Florida law reads an order not to resuscitate a patient can be signed by a court-appointed guardian, he interprets the law to mean the guardian has an obligation to find out if the ward consents.
Now, if you signed a DNR without ever really discussing that with the ward, then I don't think you're following the law.
And there are new questions about Fearley's handling of her ward's property. An Orange County comptroller's audit obtained by WESH-TV Investigates shows in 30 of her cases, 40 alleged violations of the law, including payments with no receipts, incomplete accounting records, and employees not registered with the state.
This is the time to act.
Local state attorney David Simmons tells me either the governor needs to beef up staff to investigate guardian complaints, or lawmakers need to do it.
We need to do something to further vet these individuals, to review them, to assure that these kind of abuses don't occur.
Fearley has resigned from all cases and declared she's done being a guardian, as investigations of her actions and the office that oversees 550 professional guardians and 17 public guardian offices begins. Greg Fox, WESH-TV News.
Late today, the Office of Elder Affairs told WESH-TV Investigates the head of the Office of Public and Professional Guardians was asked to resign because of a significant backlog of cases in which guardian complaints were made. That caseload is being addressed now.
And part of the state's guardian office is a toll-free hotline for complaints regarding the care of wards or actions by their guardians. We've posted this story and that phone number at WESH.com.
New at 4, one of the state investigations of complaints against a local professional guardian is now over. Appointed by courts to manage the welfare of incapacitated, mostly elderly people, Rebecca Fearley violated state law, according to findings by the State Department of Elder Affairs. WESH-TV News investigative reporter Greg Fox has this exclusive story.
The investigation of a local professional guardian began when Stephen Stryker's daughter wrote to Orange County Circuit Judge Janet Thorpe in May that the guardian had signed a Do Not Resuscitate order. 4 days later, he stopped breathing, was given no life-saving measures, and died.
I feel like my father would be alive still if it wasn't for her actions.
Ms. Fearley, can we please talk to you about your guardian cases?
The guardian, Rebecca Fearley, declined to answer my questions and has not returned emails or calls. She's facing a criminal investigation. Now, WESH-TV Investigates has obtained the final investigative report from the State Office of Public and Professional Guardians in 6 cases. In 2 of them, the agency found Fearley violated Florida statutes by not allowing incapacitated persons to be treated humanely and not protecting them against abuse, neglect, and exploitation. In a 3rd case, the agency concluded Fearley failed to account for a special needs trust and noted the purchase of large dollar amounts of gift cards. The Secretary of the Department of Elder Affairs wrote to Fearley, "Your conduct failed persons served by guardianship and the families who entrusted their loved ones to your care." In 3 other cases, the state found no evidence to support the complaints about her treatment of her wards. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement searched Fearley's Orlando office, geriatric management, earlier this month. And according to the Attorney General's office, agents found the cremated remains of 9 people. Authorities are not saying if they have identified the cremains, and so far they have not revealed what evidence they collected from Fearley's office. But these findings from Elder Affairs are being shared with law enforcement. Fearley has resigned from all of her guardian cases, and her state registration has been permanently revoked. Judges in the counties where she worked have also revoked all of the do not resuscitate orders that she authorized. Michelle?
Greg, thank you. We have major developments today in an ongoing WESH-TV investigation. A scathing new report on embattled professional guardian Rebecca Fearley indicates that she was hiding millions of dollars in payments from local courts.
The investigation began when one of her wards died after she signed a do not resuscitate order without telling the ward or his family. WESH-TV News investigative reporter Greg Fox has the latest on this disturbing case.
Rebecca Fearley continues to avoid our questions as the former professional guardian faces a criminal probe by the FDLE and a Medicaid fraud investigation by the Attorney General. And she didn't answer the door at her business, Geriatric Management in Orlando, to answer questions about this new audit. The Orange County Comptroller summed up this way.
It's appalling.
His audit found Fearley was paid $3.96 million by Advent Health since 2009. The nearly 7,000 invoices often reference vague services for 682 patients. He also found the courts unaware of her financial arrangements. In fact, just 210 were court-supervised guardian cases. Most, 472, were not. The comptroller calls that troubling. The Fearley investigation began after one of her wards died after she signed a do not resuscitate order without his knowledge. She signed more than 140 other such orders.
Could there be patients out there that have DNRs that don't want DNRs?
Hundreds, maybe.
Possibly. And these are people that need our protection. They don't need someone to take advantage of them. And you know, as far as my reaction, it was our reaction across the office, which was general disgust at some of the stuff we saw.
The comptroller also found numerous instances where Advent Health and Fearley's wards paid guardianship fees, essentially double billing for the same services. Follow this chart. In one case, a ward's medical or financial services were performed. The audit shows Fearley invoiced for those services twice. And get this, she billed Advent Health $130 per hour while sending an invoice to the court for $65 an hour to be paid by the ward. Total paid to the guardian, $195. The new information was made possible when a judge ordered Advent Health to turn over its records regarding Fearley, the hospital previously withheld from court. And this now from Advent Health. We are both surprised and dismayed with the comptroller's findings that a professional guardian withheld information from the court and improperly billed the hospital and the court for resources to care for the most vulnerable in our community. It clearly highlights the importance of the state taking action. The Orange County Comptroller is preparing a final report that will provide even more detail about Fearley's alleged billing activities and potentially the care she did or did not provide to her wards. Jim.
Greg, thanks.
WESH-TV Investigates has learned of changes aimed at keeping a closer eye on public and professional guardians.
These are the people appointed by a court to handle the medical and financial affairs of incapacitated, mostly elderly people. WESH-TV News investigative reporter Greg Fox talked exclusively with the chief judge making changes in his courts.
The actions of former professional guardian Rebecca Fearley may make you wonder just how closely the state and courts are watching the people charged with looking after thousands of wards. A criminal investigation was launched after one of her wards, Stephen Stryker, died just days after Fearley refused to revoke a do not resuscitate order she signed without his or his daughter's knowledge.
I would like to see justice for my father.
That prompted local courts to revoke more than 140 other DNRs for her wards, including Jack Marr.
Somebody needs to try to save my life.
And last month, Orange County's comptroller released a shocking audit. Fearley had billed Advent Health more than $3.6 million during the past 5 years, mostly for unknown services for 472 patients who were not legally her wards. The audit also found she double billed Advent Health and some of the 95 patients who were listed as wards.
And that's wrong. That's just very wrong.
Now the chief judge of the Ninth Circuit, which includes Orange and Osceola counties, is making substantial changes to the Guardian program to protect the vulnerable, mostly elderly people who could be victimized by their guardians.
Through the Rebecca Fearley story and incident, we've recognized that there are parts of the guardianship system that we just don't have adequate resources to be able to address.
Chief Judge Donald Myers tells me he's changing that. A new judge will be added beginning January 1st. That means one judge will handle probate and trust cases, while the other handles just guardianship and mental health. A guardian case manager will also be added. And Judge Myers is reviewing software and a database in Pennsylvania that tracks guardian cases and alerts the state and courts of unauthorized billing or payments. Fearley had more than 450 wards in more than a dozen counties.
A statewide system like that would assist us in being able to see firsthand where guardians are working, how many cases they're handling, and the potentials for fraud or abuse.
Now, I checked with the Attorney General's office and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, but neither would comment on their ongoing investigations of Fearley. In August, an FDLE search of her office recovered cremated remains of 9 people whose identities have yet to be revealed. Meredith?
Investigative reporter Greg Fox talks with the people who have the power to make those changes and with a leading critic who believes that the whole system needs to be scrapped and a new agency put in place.
It comes at you like a freight train in the dark of night.
Dr. Sam Sugar learned about Florida's guardianship laws when he and his wife Judy were caring for her mother, Idell. Judy's sisters convinced a court Idell was better off in the hands of a professional guardian who would manage her medical care and finances. The guardian moved her from her home, took control of her legal rights. When Idell suffered a stroke, the Sugars had no say in her treatment until she died.
This guardianship destroyed my wife. It strips them of their dignity and everything they ever owned and treats them as though, and they are, pieces of property.
We're family members of victims of guardianship. Wow.
Encouraged by other stories, the retired doctor founded Americans Against Abusive Probate Guardianship to try and cure guardianship law. He championed a bill that created the Office of Public and Professional Guardians in 2016. It's supposed to make sure complaints are investigated and violators punished.
We were dancing in Tallahassee. We were there.
Exactly why were you signing DNRs for so many of your wards?
But in July, court documents revealed local professional guardian Rebecca Fearley had signed Do Not Resuscitate orders, or DNRs, for more than 140 of her wards, including Stephen Stryker. He died just days after Fearley refused his daughter's request to remove the DNR. WESH-TV Investigates has been examining audits that show Fearley also double-billed Advent Health and wards for services unreported to the courts and had multiple conflicts of interest in handling her ward's assets. Sugar calls that proof the Guardian program has failed and that oversight should be placed with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation or some other state agency that issues licenses and has investigators to enforce the law.
The system needs to be blown up.
The Florida Department of Elder Affairs oversees the Office of Public and Professional Guardians. And this year, the department is asking for a huge increase in its budget, especially to address guardian complaints.
I mean, Rebecca Fearley basically failed not only the families in that questionnaire, but hundreds of families.
Elder Affairs Secretary Richard Prudhomme demanded the resignation of OPPG Executive Director Carol Berkowitz and accepted the resignations of 3 others as it became clear the program had a backlog of complaints, including against Fearley.
Those complaints weren't being addressed, and in some cases for a year and a half, right?
That is correct, and that is one reason why I asked for the director's resignation, because that's unacceptable.
Prudhomme wants to nearly double public guardian funding to $13.8 million, add $454,000 for investigations, and spend $500,000 to develop a guardian monitoring tool.
Do you think the OPPG is a failed experiment?
Absolutely not.
State Senator Kathleen Passidomo says the Guardian program can be fixed. With input from elder care advocates, Passidomo is drafting a bill that would demand court approval for DNRs, eliminate financial conflicts of interest like liquidating a ward's assets without court notification, and determine if guardian compensation should be raised to attract more guardians and reduce the caseload.
Is money the answer, or is different management the answer?
It's probably a little bit of both, because, you know, we don't want to have what happened in Orlando to happen anywhere else in the state.
Rebecca Fearley is facing criminal investigations, including one for alleged Medicaid fraud. Those allegations appear to be prompting changes to protect our most vulnerable. Greg Fox, WESH-TV News.